Donald Trump. This time, Democrats backed by several.
Let's get all this.
Opening around the U.S., our exclusive interview with California's Governor Gavin Newsom. We ask, why has the rollout of the epicenter been so slow? And what you need to know to get your shot as soon as possible.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. Added to the list of grave, unimaginable, and simply stunning moments that keep rocking our country. For the second time in 13 months, the House of Representatives has voted to impeach President Donald Trump. This time, Democrats, backed by several Republicans, laying the mantle of blame for one of this country's ugliest and most dangerous moments squarely at the president's feet. Tonight, blinking our eyes won't make the searing images of armed troops surrounding and even sleeping in our nation's capital go away. It's the reality a week after the bloody invasion provoked by the words of a president. This evening, the impeachment and the trial to come. Also, we're going to talk about the COVID vaccine. Why is it so hard to secure your place in line? We'll answer a lot of your questions about getting your shot. But first, today's dramatic bipartisan impeachment vote. Peter Alexander leads our coverage.
It's laid upon the
Tonight, for the second time in just over a year, the House delivering Donald Trump a historic rebuke, now making him the first president ever to be impeached twice.
The President of the United States incited this insurrection, this armed rebellion against our common country. He must go. He is a clear and present danger to the nation that we all love.
A single article of impeachment accusing the president of incitement of insurrection in his remarks before last week's riots began.
Donald Trump is a living, breathing, impeachable offense. It is what it is.
It wasn't another country that attacked us, but our own president.
All 222 House Democrats voting in favor of impeachment. And unlike the first impeachment of President Trump, where no House Republicans supported it, this time 10 broke ranks, including Jamie Herrera Butler.
My vote to impeach our sitting president is not a fear-based decision. I am not choosing a side, I'm choosing truth. It's the only way to defeat fear.
The top House Republican voting against impeachment.
A vote to impeach would further divide this nation.
But also leveling this stinging shot.
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding.
In the White House, officials say President Trump was monitoring the debate, now banned by Twitter and Facebook. He put out this video response.
Mob violence goes against everything I believe in and everything our movement stands for. No true supporter of mine could ever endorse political violence. Now I am asking everyone who has ever believed in our agenda to be thinking of ways to ease tensions, calm tempers.
At the Capitol, the debate at times became heated.
Some of my colleagues, some of which may well be co-conspirators, some have cited the metaphor that the president lit the flame. Well, they lit actual flames, actual fires, and we put them out.
There will be order in the House.
Most Republicans blasting the Democrats' case.
The fact that IEDs were constructed in place, how does the president incite an attack that was pre-planned and already underway before his speech concluded?
It's an obsession that is now broadened. It's not just about impeachment anymore. It's about canceling, as I've said, canceling the president and anyone that disagrees with them.
All of it coming after Vice President Pence rejected Democrats' ultimatum to invoke the 25th Amendment that Pence said was, quote, not a means of punishment. Tonight, Democrats urging a Senate conviction, they say in part to keep President Trump from holding office again.
He must not remain in power one moment longer.
This threat must be extinguished immediately. This president must be impeached and convicted, and he must be prevented from ever attempting to seize power again.
And tonight, Mitch McConnell says there is no chance the Senate could hold an impeachment trial before President Trump leaves office. And he says he is still undecided whether he will vote to convict, insisting he'll, quote, listen to the legal arguments. Lester?
All right, Peter Alexander tonight, thanks. And all attention now turns to the Senate trial. Casey Hunt is on Capitol Hill. Casey, Democrats sped through impeachment, hoping to start that trial soon, but it looks like they could have to wait a while.
Lester, that's right. Mitch McConnell tonight making clear the first weeks of the Biden administration are still going to be all about Donald Trump as the Senate holds their impeachment trial. Democrats would likely need 17 Republicans to vote with them, and that will be an uphill climb. But if McConnell decides he'll vote to convict, that could change everything. Lester.
This is so demoralizing and so sad to think that we have accomplished so much as a great nation. And to think that at one time we used to be the leading #1 country in the world that promoted democracy. We was leading in agriculture. We was leading in every department you could think of back throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s, and the 80s. And it's all started slipping away beginning in the late 80s. We've seen it decline in the 90s. We've seen it decline after 9/11. We've seen it decline after 2010. And now we're seeing it decline after 2020. This is one of the most darkest, saddest moments in history that has come about since January the 6th in watching a bunch of animals climb on top of the Capitol like a bunch of monkeys and distribute such bitter hate and such adversity in a abnormal, unacceptable way. That, yes, Donald Trump stirred up, cooked up, agitated up. This has got to be one of the most saddest moments in history, and every politician who has ever served in America since the 1776 or 1775 has to right now be rolling over in their grave. And Abraham Lincoln, he's done come out of his grave. He ain't nowhere to be found. And I know I kind of say that jokeably, but I mean, the bottom line is this is sickening. This is demoralizing. This brings tears to my eyes. This breaks my heart to think that our ancestors sacrificed so much for us just to throw it all away like this. You know, other countries are watching us right now. And I have to reflect upon what Ronald Reagan talked about pertaining to the time capsule. You know, the 1,000 points of light and city on top of a hill and all that other stuff. That what are they going to think about us 1,000 years from now? Well, you know, I'm not really concerned so much about 1,000 years from now as I am right now. What does the rest of the world think about the Americans right now towards what we're suffering and going through? It was bad enough to have a disease called the pandemic, COVID-19. It was bad enough to see all the abortions, divorces, drug abusement, bringing in all the illegals and hovering and taking care of the illegals while they was taking over our jobs by watching the rich get richer while our institutions got smaller. And now our government is $28 trillion in debt and almost 3 million incarcerated prisoners in jail. What is our adversaries, and trust me, we got more than one, and what is the rest of the people right now when they turn on their news set thinking, my God, what the hell has happened to the Americans? Well, that's the question that I'm asking myself right now. My fellow brothers and sisters in the Lord, it is time for a revival. It is time to pray. It is time to work out the wrinkles, just as Donald Trump talked about, as far as it being time to drain the swamp. We didn't realize that he was going to get in the swamp and then sink. And that's exactly what he done. Donald Trump sunk in his own swamp. And now we all have to pay the price in understanding that our leader, our provider, our commander, our president has made a total ass out of not only himself, but made an ass out of us. You know, everybody is subject to making a mistake. I'm old enough that I understand how Nixon got caught up in a big hullabaloo pertaining to him not being a crook, even though he was. I understand the reason why the 25th Amendment ever got inducted into the Constitution was because of the assassination of JFK, that we had to have other entities to get somebody off of the main stage if they was acting inappropriate or acting dangerously. I understand the hate and the animosity that caused one of the greatest presidents in the United States history, which was Abraham Lincoln, to fire off that gun. But what I don't understand is how come somebody as powerful and as rich as Donald Trump would go to the extremes of stooping lower than any other president that has ever been associated with our great nation. A cloud of darkness has befallen up over our native land. A cloud of darkness has fallen up into our byways and our highways pertaining to our drug-induced cities and streets, pertaining to all the crime and the shootings and the killings and the massacres. We have to ask ourselves the simple question. And you don't have to be a genius or an Einstein to figure it out. Is this truly who we are? And is this truly the path that we want to remain on? Because like I said a while ago, I could give a rat's you know what pertaining to what the rest of the world is going to say about the Americans 1,000 years from now. I'm pretty sure 1,000 years from now, we'll probably all figure this thing out. As far as I am concerned, the United States government helped to entrap, mislead, misguide various individuals that caused them to do what they done towards losing their minds and going to Washington, D.C. and displaying themselves in such of a disrespectful, unorthodox way. Even the all-out and out barbarian, the heathen, should have known better than to go up there and done something like this. And to think that this was an act that apparently people thought was going to be unaccountable for, especially the President of the United States, the very one that's sworn to respect and honor the Constitution. This has brought shame to our name. Now, the next question is this. Are we going to pull up our bootstraps, swallow our pride, and realize that we have faulted in failure after failure after failure for the past 30 plus years? In going back, just as the scriptures reads, and doing thy first works over again. Are we going to do that? Or are we going to remain on this path that, as far as I'm concerned, is a path of doom, is a path of shame, is a path that I don't think no country, especially the United States of America, wants to go down? There's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. There's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. We, as a civilized society, do not behave this way, or we're not supposed to, in the 21st century. Now, the white man that come over here that contaminated this ground, in me ending in what I want to say right now, we'll listen to the rest of this in a minute. But the white man, the European man, wanted to come over here and accuse the red man of being barbarians. He wanted to accuse the red man of being a heathen. He wanted to accuse the red man of being uncivilized. Uncivilized was the words that they slandered at us, simply because our people was only trying to take care of our land and take care of our people. Now, since this has occurred, I pray to God that people will look up onto the red Native American true Indians. I'm not a true Indian, but I do have a certain portion of the Cherokee blood in me. I have enough of it in me that I can say without a shadow of a doubt that those people was done wrong. And what has occurred here, as far as I'm concerned, stoops below anything that the red man ever thought about doing towards protecting his homeland and protecting his family. This is below the belt. You know, it's one thing to assassinate Lincoln. It's one thing to assassinate JFK. It's one thing to do some of the craziest stuff that the Americans over here have done. But to watch this unfold and to see this on TV brings tears to my eyes, and it brings tears to my people's eyes, because they know that the great Creator, the great Spirit, God Almighty, through his Son, Jesus Christ, is the very one that gave us this blessed ground. Some of the beautifulest rivers, beautifulest forests, beautiful hills, Rocky Mountains, Grand Canyon, Niagara Falls. I could go on and on and on towards some of the beauties that this country has offered for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And to think that somebody has done something like this that sets in the master's seat, the highest seat of the land, it literally brings tears to my eyes, and it depresses me, and it depresses my people to think that something like this would have occurred. The tribal tribunals will look at this as being one of the darkest days that has ever befallen upon to the history of the making of this great nation that we call the Americans, the America. Let freedom ring from coast to coast, and let us never forget who we are and what we are, and who gave us what he gave us, to be good stewards, to not display such unorthodox behavior. Father, eternal God, if there's ever been a time that we need your guidance, that we need your inspiration, that we need your Holy Spirit, that we need your protection, that we need your healing, that we need your knowledge, that we need good leaders in our land. If there's ever been a time, God, that we needed to pull together and realize that the devil is out to kill, steal, and destroy, and that he is the author of confusion. And just like the scriptures reads, the precious scriptures reads, that in the last days, Satan will rise up in great wrath, because he knoweth his time is short. We're not just fighting a political battle. We're not just fighting an emotional battle. We're not just fighting a culture battle, but we're fighting a spiritual battle. A spiritual battle that comes down to the very core of the reason why Christ come and died on the cross for all of our sins. Jesus never intended for us to act this way as a Christian society. And the red man never intended for us to act this way, regardless of whatever society. We will become the laughing stock of the world because of this. It will darken influences months, years ahead towards being able to have decent relationships with other correspondents across the pond, to be able to maintain various commercial and other types of dealings. And I'm so sad that my generation and the generations below me have had to experience this. And the ones above me too as well. I'm so sad that people has had to experience this that truly loves this great nation. Let's listen to the rest of this before I get so emotionally sick that I can't even eat my supper tonight.
All right, Casey, thank you. I want to bring in our political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd, and presidential historian Michael Beschloss. Chuck, first to you, where do you see the Republican Party going from here, especially after some voted to impeach?
Well, look, it is at a real crossroads. This is a very divided party, particularly the leadership of the party is in one place. They would like to get rid of the virus that is Donald Trump, whether that's Mitch McConnell, Liz Cheney. You even had some people who, while they did...
Some of them don't think it's a virus. Some of them are just like those animals that was climbing up on top of the Capitol building. They really think that Donald Trump won the election. That's why they didn't throw their hat in. You have to understand the damage that this man has caused by putting out this type of rhetoric. I'm trying to think, has there ever been an example of anything that's even close to this that has come close to this kind of damage? And I guess it would be if I was a commander of a moving army, kind of like what went on down in Shiloh. I'm going to use Shiloh, Tennessee, down by Pickwick, for an example. I was a commander of an army, and all of a sudden, out of the woods come a conquering force that was so powerful that it not only met my force, but it actually exceeded it for a day or two before they finally drove them back. In other words, this is one of those jaw-dropping, head-scratching, heart-breaking, hair-curling moments to where you got to look and wonder, in conjunction with the words that Ronald Reagan used, that what are they thinking about us in regards to this type of unorthodox display? Because I guarantee you, if it would have been Russia, if it would have been Putin that done something like this against the body, going up against the body, they would probably execute him live on TV. I don't necessarily agree with their methods, but I'm just telling you what that they would have probably done. Same thing over in other communist countries. They would string you up just like they done Saddam Hussein, and they would put an end to your existence. So I tend to wonder, whenever you look at punishment and shame, the way that we have gone about doing it actually makes one wounded, but doesn't actually dissolve. So the pain that he has to face now on a day-to-day level will be much, much intenser than any person that's ever been executed in some of those other crazy countries. This shame will be on our name the rest of our lives. And this moment and this time will never be forgotten. And it should be looked upon as a teaching, instructing moment for anybody running for the United States president or any other form of government, regardless whether it's federal, state, or local, that we have certain bylaws, we have certain values, we have certain ethics, certain laws that we attend to that are sacred, that makes the temple of what got violated, raped, stalked, smeared, taken advantage of a week ago. We've got certain things in place that will prevent from this ever happening. Or we thought that we did. We never thought that anybody would be so bold to do this. And if the truth be known, I really and truly think that Donald Trump knows that he has misguided his people in lying to them to the point that even himself is no longer convinced that he won the election. Whenever you have missed the mark by about 7 or 8 million points, according to Donald Trump, that's a landslide. That's a landslide because that's how he won the first election that he ran in. It's a horrible, horrible thing for our children to watch something like this. And the elders, the parents, the teachers, the instructors, and I hope to God the media will make it very clear towards what has happened here and what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And Nancy Pelosi, the Madam Speaker of the House, she stood up and she done that in which what was right. She stood up because she knew that he was nothing more than an imposter. Donald Trump was nothing more than an imposter. And he couldn't go with the grain. Now, there's no doubt that Donald Trump brought some things to the table that we now are looking at that should have been brought to the table. But once more, there's a right and a wrong way to do things. There's a right and a wrong way to do things, to carry out a plan. This is what Donald Trump is guilty of. And thank God tonight, which is a week later, we're seeing some sort of justice in regards to a retaliation against the injustice that Donald Trump was trying to pull a slick willy over the will of the American people.
Vote for impeachment are hoping that the result is that he is somehow excommunicated from the party, and impeachment isn't a bad way to do it. But here's the rub, Lester. The problem is, while the leadership's in one place, the grassroots of the party is still a Trump party.
All right, Mike. See what I'm saying? In other words, you still got people within the party that hadn't, what's the old saying, smoot the booch or the pooch. No. Prideful. Too prideful to admit that they was wrong in their decisions about their cult leader. And that's exactly what Donald Trump turned into. He turned into a cult leader. Now, he tried to emphasize the Bible. And he tried to make the Holy Bible known of being a believer in the Bible. I think he was a Methodist, if I'm not mistaken. But for some reason, all of this got twisted and tangled and turned around to the point that now people, instead of seeing him as a shepherd, they're seeing him more as an occult leader. Like a Jim Jones, please follow me. We'll drink our Kool-Aid later. You know what I'm saying? And it's really sad because it was done magiciously right in front of our eyes, just like a master magician. The movement of the hands. It was unbelievable.
This is a historic second impeachment of a president. How will history books describe this moment?
Sad.
They will say that Donald Trump owns one half of all the presidential impeachments in history. They will say that today was the most bipartisan impeachment in modern history. And also, this guy can get convicted. That's a real possibility. If that happens, the founders of our country always intended that a Senate trial that convicted was not just to remove a president from office, but also to say to future Americans, this is the kind of person who should never be president.
All right, Michael and Chuck, thank you. With 1 week until inauguration, Washington is ramping up an almost unprecedented security operation tonight involving the biggest National Guard deployment in the Capitol's history. Here's Tom Costello.
It may be the biggest security presence in Washington since the Civil War. 9-foot-high perimeter fencing, buildings boarded up, streets closed, tens of thousands of local, state, and federal law enforcement officers, and today news that an additional 5,000 National Guard troops are coming to D.C., most of them armed.
There's a major security threat, and we are working to mitigate those threats. Expect to see somewhere upwards beyond 20,000 members of the National Guard that will be here in the footprint of the District of Columbia.
20,000 troops would be double the number at President Obama's inauguration, most carrying semi-automatic weapons, about 1,000 sleeping in the Capitol overnight. Today, House Speaker Pelosi thanked some of them.
The Capitol, our democracy, our Constitution are safe because of your patriotism.
Police and the FBI continue to warn of violent right-wing extremist plots. Facebook reports an increase in signals suggesting future attacks. And veteran intelligence experts say foreign countries may also be active online.
I wouldn't rule out the influence from nation states, China, Russia, Iran, trying to sow seeds of hate and discontent inside the United States.
Analysts say the plots are coming to life in dark web encrypted chat rooms targeting the government and members of Congress.
There are now 3 plots that we've been briefed on to attack the Capitol in Washington, D.C., and attack lawmakers and assassinate them potentially. So we are taking those threats extremely seriously.
And tonight, new information about last week's attack, which experts say was clearly coordinated. In addition to Officer Brian Sicknick, who was killed, 14 other officers were injured. The FBI has identified at least 200 suspects and is looking for hundreds more. Acting Attorney General Jeff Rosen.
To the American public, I ask that if you are aware of any criminal activity or violent acts being planned, please share what you know with law enforcement or the FBI.
Among those identified inside the Capitol last week, Olympic gold medal swimmer Clete Keller, photographed wearing his USA Olympic jacket, arrested today. And this man wearing a Camp Auschwitz t-shirt, 56-year-old Robert Packer, arrested and charged with violent entry to impede Congress.
Tom, there have been a lot of questions raised about some visitors to the Capitol the day before the attack. I know some lawmakers want an investigation. What's this all about?
Yeah, they were allegedly getting tours despite the pandemic, and these lawmakers say that these people on the tour seemed to be gathering intel on the layout of the building, and then allegedly some of them showed up at the attack the next day.
Yeah, it's been a week and so many questions, Tom. Thanks. As the police and military work to secure state capitals around the country, troubling questions tonight about some in their ranks who may have joined the riot in Washington. Gabe Gutierrez has that story.
Tonight, with state capitals bracing for violent protests this weekend, there's growing scrutiny of those tasked with keeping the peace. Police departments across the country have opened investigations into allegations some off-duty officers may have been involved in last week's insurrection. A Houston police officer relieved of duty.
I can't tell you the anger I feel at the thought of a police officer and other police officers thinking they get to go storm the Capitol.
Others in Virginia and Maryland put on leave.
If any SPD employee participated directly in assaulting the U.S. Capitol, I will terminate them.
Meanwhile, the military's top generals are reminding service members that any act to disrupt the constitutional process is not only against our traditions, values, and oath, it is against the law. Several people involved in last week's attack had served in the military. Among those arrested, Jake Angeli and Larry Randall Brock Jr. Air Force veteran Ashley Babbitt was fatally shot by police. Here in Michigan, concerns about law enforcement sympathizing with far-right extremists have mounted since last April, when armed militia members crowded into the state capitol to protest COVID restrictions.
You'll see a number of law enforcement agents who were taking selfies with the individuals that had taken over the Capitol. So is it a concern to me? it is a concern.
Lansing's mayor is now asking Michigan's governor to deploy the National Guard here. Lester?
And you know, that's the thing about it. Last year, we wasn't just dealing with the COVID, something that was horrifying pertaining to what has happened all over the world. But we have seen these movements, regardless whether it was up Michigan or Portland or other places, to where they not only done destruction, but in some places moved in and thought that they could take over. And I have been bewildered by this in thinking, where is all this going? Well, now we see where it has headed to. This is the bottom of the barrel for a country. Actually, it's the most dangerous state that the American government has ever been in, because it shows our enemies that we ourselves are divided. And what did Jesus say about a divided house? He said a divided house would not stand. You know, I don't understand how SWAT, special forces, that's going to be up on top of roofs with special artillery looking down at the crowd, is going to be able to make determinations on who's doing what during the inauguration, providing that there is an uprising during the inauguration. But I'm in awe by thinking, how are SWAT members going to know whether or not they're shooting one of their own, or they're shooting the opposing forces that's coming at them? Because like they just got through saying, this is from the inside out and the outside in. This is the very thing that caused Rome to fall. And this is the very thing that I've been preaching to everybody about, towards this is the path that we don't want to take towards becoming destructive to each other.
Gabe Gutierrez, thanks. In their final days, presidents usually defer to their successors and resist major policy moves, but not President Trump, whose administration is making decisions Joe Biden might not be able to change. Andrea Mitchell explains.
After the riot at the Capitol, the president finally promised an orderly transition. But he's taking steps to tie President-elect Biden's hands on key policies at home and abroad. This week, a new rule from the Environmental Protection Agency, making it tougher to control harmful emissions that contribute to climate change. Before that, new travel bans on green card applicants and temporary visa holders to further limit immigration. This as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo lays roadblocks for the president-elect around the world. On Saturday, removing restrictions on U.S. relations with Taiwan that had been in place for decades, the most sensitive issue with China, which has furiously condemned the move. Monday, Pompeo declaring Cuba a state sponsor of terror, reversing an Obama decision from 2015 that was critical for establishing diplomatic relations. And yesterday, Pompeo accused Iran of ties to al-Qaeda without citing any evidence.
You now have the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, the Islamic Republic of Iran, as the home base for al-Qaeda.
A major battle to Biden's hopes of rejoining the Iran nuclear deal that Trump abandoned in 2018. The president-elect has vowed to freeze or undo any of these last-minute orders that he can. But unwinding the foreign policy decisions may be a lot harder. And there is no sign that President Trump is done yet. Lester.
Andrea Mitchell tonight. Thank you, Andrea. In just 60 seconds, lowering the threshold for who can get the COVID vaccine in the pandemic's epicenter, plus what you can do to get the vaccine as quickly as possible. Our Miguel Almaguer is in California, the nation's current epicenter, and spoke exclusively to Governor Gavin Newsom about why it's been so slow.
Some of California's most iconic landmarks like Disneyland and Dodger Stadium are becoming mass vaccination sites. After a slow start, the governor promised 1 million more residents would be vaccinated by this weekend, now offering a dose to anyone over 65.
The CDC says California